"You can sleep on the couch, or better yet, get a hotel room," said my daughter-in-law when her parents suddenly moved in with us, as if the house belonged to them. "You'd better leave. We won't have enough room for 5, her father added contemptuously. I quietly moved out, but a week later they were overcome with panic. "This is impossible. This can't be," my daughter-in-law screamed after what I did. She didn't know that this was only the beginning of my revenge. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The February morning air felt crisp against my face as I rounded the corner onto Saguaro Drive, my water bottle nearly empty after an hour of walking through the neighborhood. At 62, I'd learned to appreciate these early routines. 7 o'clock sharp. Same route, same comfortable track jacket that had seen 5 Arizona winters. My knees protested less when I kept them moving. Then I saw the truck, a budget rental, boxy and white, sat in my driveway like an unwelcome monument. It blocked the garage completely, forcing me to stop at the curb. My pulse quickened, but not from exercise. Confusion flooded through me, followed immediately by something darker. I approached the front door, noticing it stood slightly ajar. Inside, my living room had transformed into something unrecognizable. Cardboard boxes formed precarious towers against walls I'd painted myself 3 summers ago. My furniture, the sectional sofa, the oak coffee table, the standing lamp, had been shoved aside without care. 2 strangers occupied the space like they belonged there. The man was my age, maybe slightly younger, with a thick build and thinning gray hair. He wore a faded polo shirt tucked into jeans belted too high, and his voice carried across the room as he directed traffic. The woman beside him frowned at a box marked "Fragile," her face set in permanent disapproval. She had too much perfume on. I could smell it from the doorway, something floral and overwhelming. My son Neil struggled past them carrying a box labeled "Kitchen" in black marker. His face was red, whether from effort or something else, I couldn't tell. Behind him, Cora, my daughter-in-law, wiped her hands on her jeans and finally noticed me standing there. "Oh, you're back," she said, like I'd been gone for weeks instead of an hour. "What's happening here?" I kept my voice level, professional. 35 years in logistics management had taught me to assess situations before reacting. Cora tilted her head slightly. A gesture I'd learned meant she was about to say something she knew I wouldn't like. "Dad didn't tell you? My parents sold their place and need somewhere to stay for a few months while they close on their new condo. It'll be fine. We're all family." The way she called Neil Dad, instead of using my name, landed like a small blade between my ribs. I turned toward my son, who just set down his box with a heavy thud. "Neil?" He didn't look at me. "Dad, I was going to tell you, but things moved fast. Cora's parents needed help. I thought you'd understand." "Understand that strangers are moving into my house without anyone asking me?" "It's our house, too," Neil said quietly, still avoiding my eyes. "Cora and I live here. We make decisions together." The fact that they'd lived here rent-free for 2 years seemed to escape his memory. I watched him pick up another box and disappear toward the stairs, his shoulders hunched like a man expecting a blow. The stranger in the polo shirt, Clark, I'd learn later, lowered himself into my recliner with a satisfied grunt. My chair, the one I'd sat in every evening for 8 years, reading or watching the news or just thinking in the quiet hours after everyone else went to bed. "This chair's seen better days," Clark announced to no one in particular. "When did you buy it? The 80s? 8 years ago," I said. He shifted his weight, testing the cushions. "Feels older. You might want to upgrade while we're here. Place could use some updates." I said nothing. He smirked, misreading my silence as weakness when it was actually calculation. The woman, Rose, had moved into my kitchen, opening cabinets and rearranging contents with the casual authority of someone who belonged there. The rest of the day passed in a blur of wrongness. I retreated to my bedroom while they unloaded box after box, claiming territory inch by inch. In the silence behind my closed door, I pulled the fireproof safe from my closet and removed the deed to the house. My name appeared there alone, no co-signers, no joint ownership. I'd worked for this place, paid every mortgage payment on time for 15 years before satisfying the loan in full back in 2019. This house was mine. That clarity steadied something inside me. Dinner brought fresh humiliation. We gathered around the table I'd built with my own hands, solid oak assembled piece by piece in this very room. Clark dominated the conversation immediately, his voice filling every corner. "Way too cold in here," he said, gesturing vaguely at the walls. "What have you got that thermostat set to? 60 degrees?" 72, I replied. 72? That's practically tropical. We'll need to talk about house rules if we're all living together. The phrase hung in the air like smoke. Rose picked at her food, then looked up with practiced concern. "Is the guest room always this small? I can barely fit my dresser in there." "It's a standard bedroom," I said. "Plenty of space for temporary." "Well, I suppose we'll manage," Rose interrupted, her tone suggesting enormous personal sacrifice. "Though I don't know how you lived here comfortably. Clark and I are used to more room." Cora reached over and touched her mother's arm sympathetically, completely ignoring the way my grip tightened on my fork. Neil studied his plate like it contained answers to questions he was too afraid to ask. I tried to catch my son alone after dinner, cornering him in the garage while the others settled in front of the television. My television, tuned to a channel I never watched, the volume higher than I ever set it. "Son, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me about this?" Neil finally looked at me, but couldn't hold eye contact. "It just happened fast. Cora's parents needed help. I thought you'd understand. It's only a few months. A few months living in my house without asking me." "It's our house too, Dad." He stepped around me, heading for the door. "Cora and I live here. We make decisions together." He disappeared inside before I could point out the obvious. They lived here because I'd allowed it, out of love and generosity, never asking for rent, never demanding timelines. Late that night, unable to sleep, I went to the kitchen for water. Thirst had become an excuse to move through my own house, to verify what I already knew was happening. I opened the cabinet where I kept my mugs and found everything rearranged. My favorite, a simple blue ceramic piece my late wife had given me 20 years ago, had been shoved to the back, nearly hidden. In its place, Rose's floral teacups sat front and center, arranged like they'd always been there. I stood holding that blue mug in the darkness, cold tile beneath my bare feet. Something crystallized inside me then. Not rage. Rage was hot and temporary. This was colder, harder. This was the feeling I got in my old job when a problem needed solving, when emotion would only cloud the necessary calculations. They thought I was weak, thought I'd accept this invasion because I was old, because I was alone, because Neil was my son, and family meant swallowing indignities with a smile. They were wrong. I set the mug back in its new position, turned off the light, and returned to my bedroom. Tomorrow would bring new violations, I was certain. But I'd learned something valuable tonight. I'd learned exactly who I was dealing with. 3 days changed everything. 72 hours of systematic invasion, each small violation adding weight to the pressure building in my chest. Clark changed the thermostat 6 times, I counted, always dropping it to 66 or 68 degrees, until the house felt like winter had moved indoors. My favorite parking spot disappeared daily, claimed by his old Chevy Silverado with its faded paint and rusted bumper. In the bathroom, my toiletries had been relocated to a bottom shelf, making room for Rose's extensive collection of lotions, powders, and creams that multiplied like bacteria. Tuesday morning, I discovered Cora had opened my mail. A bank statement, my personal correspondence, lay on the counter with the envelope torn carelessly. "I thought it might be important," she said when I asked, not looking up from her phone. But Wednesday evening, I returned from a walk to find my leftovers gone. The pasta I'd made Monday night, carefully portioned for 2 more meals, had vanished. Clark sat in my chair, his chair now, apparently, picking his teeth with casual satisfaction. "That was good," he said. "You should make more." I didn't respond. My logistics brain was tracking everything, building a database of offenses without my conscious direction. It's what I'd done for 35 years. Noticed patterns, identified problems, calculated solutions. Thursday morning at 6:30, I came downstairs to find everyone already gathered in the kitchen. This was wrong immediately. Neil and Cora never rose before 7:30. Clark usually slept until 8. Rose complained about morning light, yet here they sat, coffee made, toast prepared, waiting. They'd been waiting for me. Cora sat with her spine straight, hands folded on the table, her business presentation posture. Clark looked smug, leaning back in his chair like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. Rose picked at her food without eating. Neil studied his eggs with unusual intensity. Dad, we need to talk about the sleeping arrangements, Cora began, the words rehearsed, delivered with corporate efficiency. With 5 adults in the house, we're running out of space. I carefully set down my coffee cup. 5 adults? This house has 3 bedrooms. Exactly. Neil and I have one, my parents have the guest room, and you have the master. But my parents need storage space. So you could take the couch for a few weeks, or honestly, a hotel might be more comfortable. The audacity of it stole my breath for a moment. You're asking me to leave my bedroom, in my house. Cora's expression arranged itself into practiced patience, the kind managers use with difficult employees. It's not just your house, Dad. Neil lives here too. We're trying to make this work for everyone. Before I could formulate a response, Clark interrupted, his voice cutting through the morning air with casual cruelty. Let's be real here. 5 people in this place is too many. Someone needs to make room. I turned to face him directly. Make room? Who do you suggest? Well, you're retired. You've got time and flexibility. The rest of us have jobs, responsibilities. Makes sense for you to find somewhere else temporarily. Maybe permanently. We could work out some arrangement. An arrangement. For my house. Clark shrugged, the gesture dismissing decades of my work, my mortgage payments, my life. Just being practical. No need to get emotional about it. I looked at my son. He was the only person at this table who mattered, the only one whose opinion could change what happened next. Neil, look at me. He raised his eyes slowly, but couldn't hold my gaze. The weakness in his face told me everything. Do you want me to leave? Dad, His voice barely reached across the table. It's not that simple. Cora's parents need help. It's just temporary. We're trying to figure it out. I didn't ask if it's temporary. I asked if you want me to leave my own home. Neil returned to his eggs, fork scraping against the plate in the silence. Can we not make this harder than it has to be? I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, loud in the quiet kitchen. Rose spoke then, her voice dripping with false sweetness. Wilbert, dear, we're not trying to push you out. But you have to understand, at our age we need certain comforts. That guest room is barely large enough for our bed. We need space for Clark's clothes, my shoes, our personal items. Surely you see that. I see that you moved into my house without asking and now want me to leave it. Her expression shifted to wounded innocence. There's no need for that attitude. We're family. Family helps each other. Family asks first. I walked out of the kitchen, up the stairs to my bedroom. Behind me I heard the murmur of voices. Clark saying something about stubborn old man. I closed the door and looked around the room that had been mine for 16 years. The bed I'd shared with my wife before cancer took her. The dresser holding clothes I'd bought with money I'd earned. The window overlooking a yard I'd maintained every weekend. I pulled my suitcase from the closet. 90 minutes later, I descended the stairs with one wheeled suitcase, one box of documents, and my laptop bag. They'd moved to the living room, arranged themselves on furniture like an audience waiting for the show to continue. Clark had claimed my chair again. Rose sat beside Cora on the sofa. Neil stood by the window, his posture defensive. Cora saw the suitcase first. Oh, you're actually going? I kept my hand on the doorknob. You told me to leave. I'm leaving. Neil finally spoke, pushing away from the window. Dad, wait. We can talk about this. You already made your choice, at breakfast, when you said nothing. I walked out, pulling the door closed behind me with a firm click. Not a slam, I'm not a man who slams doors, but final enough that they'd hear it. Through the window I saw them frozen in tableau, watching my car pull away from the curb. Rose's mouth was moving, probably offering some commentary I was grateful not to hear. The Desert Palms Motel sat on East McDowell Road, 12 minutes from the house if traffic cooperated. The building was nothing special. 2 stories of stucco painted the color of sand, doors opening onto an exterior walkway. But it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, it was space no one had invaded. The clerk was a young woman named Maria, her name tag slightly crooked on her uniform. She looked at my face. I don't know what she saw there, but her expression softened. How many nights? Not sure yet. Start with a week. She typed into her computer, then paused. I'm going to put you in 214. It has a desk. You look like you need space to think. First kindness I'd felt in 4 days. Thank you. The room smelled like industrial cleaning products and old carpet, but it had what I needed: a bed, a desk, a chair, a bathroom, and silence. I set my suitcase by the closet and carried my box of documents to the desk. Spread them out methodically. Deed here, property tax records there, mortgage payoff statement to the left. In the center, I placed an old spiral notebook from 2022, the one where I documented the $35,000 loan to Neil for his car. Never repaid, never even acknowledged. My laptop opened to a search engine. I typed, Arizona property law, homeowner rights. Hours passed. My coffee went cold in its styrofoam cup. The afternoon sun moved across the wall, then faded to evening. I read about guests versus tenants, about the distinction between people who have lease agreements and people who simply occupy space. I learned about notice requirements, about revocation of permission, about the legal right to exclude others from property you own. By midnight, my hotel notepad held 3 pages of careful notes. The television in the next room murmured through the wall, someone's late-night viewing. Outside, cars passed on McDowell Road, headlights sweeping across my curtains. I sat back in the desk chair and looked at everything spread before me: the evidence of ownership, the proof of betrayal, the legal foundation for what came next. They'd made a mistake. Several mistakes, actually. They'd assumed I was weak because I was older, alone, because I'd stayed calm instead of exploding. They'd confused patience with powerlessness. That was going to cost them. I opened a fresh page in my notebook and began writing a list. Not of grievances, those were already documented in my memory, each small violation catalogued with perfect clarity. This was different. This was a plan. Step 1 began tomorrow. First thing. The next morning arrived with the same institutional coffee and the same documents spread across surfaces like evidence at a crime scene. I'd been at the Desert Palms for 1 full day. By day 7, the maid had stopped offering to clean. She'd glance through the door at my organized chaos and retreat quietly. I woke each morning at 5:30, made coffee in the small machine that sputtered and hissed, then returned to my work. The deed sat in the center of the desk, surrounded by concentric circles of supporting documentation. Property tax receipts dating back to 2008. Insurance policies listing only my name. Mortgage statements showing 17 years of payments. Every single one made by me, from my account, never late. On day 4, searching through old emails on my laptop, I found something I'd almost forgotten. May 2022. Neil needed a car for his new job. The dealership required $35,000 down. His email was right there, preserved in my inbox. Dad, this is a loan, not a gift. I'll pay you back $1,000 a month starting next month. You have my word. I transferred the money that same day. The bank confirmation sat in my downloads folder, 3 years old but perfectly valid. I searched for repayment records. Nothing. Not $1 returned. I checked every account, reviewed 3 years of statements. The loan had simply evaporated from Neil's memory like morning fog. I created a spreadsheet at the motel's business center, printing it on their slightly gray paper. 36 months. 36 missed payments. The numbers told a story more damning than any accusation I could voice. On day 5, Mrs. Walker called. Her voice carried apology and concern in equal measure. Wilbert, I hope I'm not overstepping, but last night there were at least 8 cars parked on your lawn. Music was so loud my windows rattled. 8 cars? Some kind of gathering. Lasted past midnight. I almost called the police, but I wasn't sure if you'd authorized it. I didn't. I'm not even there right now. Her pause held questions she was too polite to ask. Oh, well, that explains things. I saw your truck was gone all week. Are you all right? I will be. Thank you for telling me. After she hung up, I added her call to my notes. Bob Chen had phoned 2 days earlier, mentioning he'd run into Clark at the mailbox. He was telling me about his new house, your address. Thought you should know. They weren't just occupying my home. They were claiming ownership of it. On day 6, I drove to Old Town Scottsdale. The law office sat in a restored building with territorial architecture. the kind tourists photographed. Chen and associates occupied the second floor. Margaret Chen was 48, with graying hair pulled into an efficient bun and eyes that assessed me in seconds. I handed her the 2-page summary I'd prepared. Dates, names, chronological incidents. She read it in 4 minutes without interrupting. Most clients come in emotional and disorganized, she said, looking up. You've done my job for me. I spent 35 years in logistics. I know how to present information. She spread Arizona revised statutes across her desk, showing me highlighted sections. Mr. Brown, let me be direct. This is your house, your name on the deed. No co-owners, no co-signers. They have no legal standing. My daughter-in-law said it's Neil's house too, that he lives there so he makes decisions. Living somewhere doesn't confer ownership. I could live in a mansion for a year, wouldn't make it mine. Your son is essentially a guest in your home, an adult child living rent-free. The words landed with unexpected weight. Rent-free. 3 years now. Which means you've been more than generous. Generosity has limits. They found yours. We discussed the eviction notice. She explained that Clark and Rose, having no lease or rental agreement, were simply guests. Arizona law was clear. I could revoke their permission to stay. 30 days' notice was required. Not courtesy, but legal necessity. What exactly will this notice say? I asked. It'll state that Clark and Rose Miller are occupying your property without a lease or rental agreement. As guests, their welcome has been revoked. They have 30 days to vacate, per Arizona law. After 30 days, if they remain, we file for formal eviction through the courts. What about Neil and Cora? She paused, tapping her pen against the legal pad. They're more complicated because of the duration of their stay. But here's the thing. They don't own the property. You can begin charging them rent, effective immediately. Or you can serve them a similar notice. Your choice. I want everyone out. Then we'll start with the Millers. The legal path is clearest there. She drafted the notice while I waited, her fingers efficient on the keyboard. The document emerged from her printer on letterhead that looked official and intimidating. Bold headers, legal citations, clean formatting. We walked down the hall to Tom Blackwood's office. Tom was 55, meticulous, with reading glasses that hung on a chain. He reviewed the notice carefully, checked my driver's license against the deed, then applied his notary seal with the gravity of someone who understood that documents had power. This is ironclad, he said, handing it back. They'll have no recourse. Then he looked at me directly. Mr. Brown, I have to ask, are you prepared for how they'll react? I expect them to be angry. Angry people do unpredictable things. Make sure you document everything. If they damage property, call police immediately. If they threaten you, file for a restraining order. This paper protects you legally, but it doesn't protect you physically. I've known my son for 37 years. He's not violent. No, but you don't know Clark Miller, and desperate people surprise you. I took the warning seriously. That evening, back in my motel room, I added, research home security cameras to my notes. Margaret called before I went to sleep. One more thing. When you serve this notice, don't engage emotionally. Hand it to them, or better yet, tape it to the door. Don't argue, don't justify, don't apologize. The document speaks for itself. They'll call me. My son will call. Then keep responses brief. This is my legal right. The notice explains everything. Contact my attorney if you have questions. Don't get drawn into emotional manipulation. I spent a week being manipulated. I'm done with that. Her slight smile came through in her voice. Good. Maintain that resolve. People like Clark Miller rely on others backing down. Don't give him that satisfaction. I sat on the motel bed that night, the notarized notice in my hands. The paper felt heavier than it should, weighted with consequences. Tomorrow, everything would change. I was ready for it. 8 days after they forced me out, I went home. Thursday morning, 10:30. I'd chosen the timing deliberately. Neil and Cora left for work at 8. Their cars gone, confirmed by a text from Mrs. Walker, who'd become my unexpected surveillance network. The Millers followed a predictable pattern. Morning walk at 9:30. Return around 11:30. I had a 2-hour window. My truck pulled into the driveway, my spot, reclaimed. The house looked the same from outside, but I knew better. I approached the front door with my old key, half expecting they'd change the locks on my own house. They hadn't. Amateur mistake. Pete's security solutions arrived 20 minutes later. Pete was professional, maybe early 40s, with a tool belt that looked like it had seen serious use. I showed him the deed. Says here you're the sole owner since 2008. That's clear enough for me. I want locks that can't be picked easily. Something solid. I'll install grade 1 deadbolts, commercial quality. Unless someone breaks a window, they're not getting in without keys. Good. I'll take 6 copies of each key. He studied my face for a moment. Family situation? Something like that. Say no more. I see it more than you'd think. 4 exterior doors needed changing. Front, back, garage side entry, garage main. Pete worked with efficient precision, and I helped, holding doors, carrying tools, testing each new lock after installation. The process was mechanical, deeply satisfying. Each lock that changed represented control regained. By 12:15, the house was fortified. The front door deadbolt clicked with solid authority. The back door handle turned smoothly under my grip. The garage entry now had a keypad code that only I knew. While Pete finished the last door, I unpacked 2 wireless security cameras from their boxes. Ring, purchased yesterday at Home Depot. One went above the front door, angled to capture the porch and driveway. The second mounted above the back door, covering the yard entrance. They synced to my phone within minutes. Now I'd have video evidence of everything. At 1 o'clock, I taped the eviction notice to the front door at eye level. Impossible to miss. The document looked exactly as intimidating as Margaret intended. Bold headers, legal language, the notary seal prominent at the bottom. I photographed it in place with my phone. Proof of service. Then I walked through the house methodically, documenting everything. The living room furniture had been rearranged carelessly. My mother's antique lamp, the Tiffany-style piece she'd left me, was missing entirely. I made a note. In the kitchen, cabinets had been reorganized, my dishes mixed randomly with theirs. My bedroom was the worst. Rose's perfume bottles covered the dresser. Clark's clothes hung in my closet, pushing my things to one corner. The bed had different sheets, floral print I'd never bought. I photographed it all, timestamps visible on every image. Then I sat down in my recliner, the one Clark had appropriated, and reclaimed it. Made coffee in my kitchen. Set the thermostat to 72 degrees. The house felt different now, but it was mine again. At 5:47, the security camera caught Cora's sedan, pulling into the driveway. She was home early. I watched on my phone as she approached the door, tried her key. Confusion crossed her face. She tried again, jiggling the handle. Nothing. She pulled out her phone. Mine rang 30 seconds later. I answered on the 3rd ring. Hello? What did you do? My key doesn't work. Her voice shook with anger, not fear. I changed the locks. It's my house. You can't do this. We live here. You can't just lock us out. There's an eviction notice on the door. It explains everything. Your parents have 30 days. My parents? What about us? What about Neil? He's your son. Neil should have thought about that when he let you kick me out. This is insane. You're being cruel. We need our things. You can collect your belongings within 30 days. The notice specifies the process. All further questions go to my attorney, Margaret Chen. I recited the phone number clearly. She was still yelling when I ended the call. 15 minutes later, Neil called. His voice sounded broken in a way I'd never heard before. Dad, please, we can talk about this. We had chances to talk. At breakfast, when Cora told me to leave. You chose silence. I was trying to keep the peace. Cora's parents needed help. In my house, without asking me. Then you told me to get a hotel. That was Cora, not me. You sat there. You said nothing. That was your choice, too. Where are we supposed to go tonight? We have work tomorrow. The house has all our stuff. You'll figure it out. You're resourceful enough to plan evicting your father. Apply that creativity to your own situation. His desperation bled through the phone. At least let us get our clothes, our toiletries. The notice allows supervised retrieval of essential items. Call my attorney to schedule. I ended the call. He tried twice more. I didn't answer. At 6:04, the Millers returned. The security camera captured Clark's face perfectly as he read the notice, his expression moving from confusion to comprehension to rage. His face turned a concerning shade of purple. Rose stood behind him, mouth moving in what I assumed were complaints. Clark called. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to his message. His voice was venomous, threatening lawsuits and police and public humiliation. This isn't over, Wilbert. Not by a long shot. You made a big mistake today. Empty threats. Margaret had prepared me for exactly this reaction. Cora called again and again. On the fourth call in 10 minutes, she'd shifted tactics completely. Please, Wilbert, be reasonable. My parents are in their 60s. They can't just find a place overnight. They have 30 days. That's what the law requires. I'm following it exactly. Can we at least stay tonight? Just tonight? We'll figure something out tomorrow. No. You're really going to make your son sleep in his car? I slept in a motel because you told me to leave. He'll survive one uncomfortable night. I didn't think you were this cold. I'm not cold. I'm protecting what's mine. There's a difference. Contact my attorney. I blocked her number before she could respond. The calls finally stopped. Outside, through the window, I could see them gathered on the lawn. 4 figures in the fading light, having urgent conversations. Probably deciding which hotel to choose, which friend might take them in for the night. Inside, I sat in my chair, in my house, with my coffee cooling in my favorite mug. For the first time in 8 days, I felt like I could breathe. 6 days after the lockout, a letter arrived from Davidson and Associates. Their letterhead was expensive, embossed, heavy paper. Inside, legal language demanded I rescind the eviction notice because Neil had established residency in my home. I scanned it immediately and emailed it to Margaret. Her response came 3 hours later with the subject line, "As expected, no merit." She'd drafted a rebuttal that dismantled their claim methodically. Neil was an adult child, living rent-free. No lease existed. No rent had ever been paid. Arizona law distinguished guests from tenants with surgical precision. His residency claim failed on every count. I read her response twice, savoring the clarity of it. Legal language could be beautiful when it protected the truth. On day 7, Cora appeared on my security camera at 2 in the afternoon. She stood on the porch alone, hand raised to knock, then hesitating. No Neil, no parents, just her, looking exhausted in a way I'd never seen. Hair less styled, dark circles visible even through the camera's lens. I watched her for 30 seconds before opening the door. Didn't invite her in. Just stood behind the screen door with my arms crossed. The mesh barrier between us felt symbolic. "Wilbert, can we please talk? Like adults?" Her voice aimed for calm, but missed. "We can talk, right here. Can I at least come inside? It's awkward standing on the porch. You made me leave this house. You can stand on the porch for 5 minutes. She flinched. "That's... okay. Fine. Look, we hired a lawyer. He says Neil has residency rights. My lawyer says he doesn't. Mine is correct. You can't just decide that. There are laws." "Yes, there are. I'm following them. Are you?" She shifted her weight, trying a different approach. "My parents need more time. They can't just go back to their She stopped abruptly. I'd heard it, though. Crystal clear. "Go back?" I kept my voice very quiet. "I thought they sold their condo." Her face drained of color. "They did. I meant they need to find a new place." "That's not what you said. You said go back. They still have it, don't they?" "That's not the point. The point is they lied. You lied. All of you." Each word dropped like a stone between us. "They never needed to live here. They wanted to live here. For free. In my house. You're twisting my words." "I'm hearing your words. For the first time, clearly." She tried again, voice breaking this time. "Please, we're family. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" "It meant everything. That's why you telling me to leave hurt so much. I was trying to help my parents. By sacrificing me, without asking, without caring. We made a mistake. Can't you forgive that? You decided I wasn't needed. Now I've decided the same thing. What do you want? What would make this right?" "Nothing. It's already right. The law is clear. The eviction stands." She left without another word. Her car door slammed hard enough to echo down the street. That evening she called. Not manipulative this time. Not crying. Just furious. "This is impossible. This can't be happening. You can't evict us." I kept my voice measured. "It's not impossible. It's happening. The court has the paperwork. You're destroying this family, making my parents homeless, ruining Neil's life. Your parents have a condo. They're not homeless, and Neil is an adult who made choices. They're elderly. How can you abuse people their age? Abuse? I let that word hang for a moment. Your father told me, just move out entirely. 5 people is too many. Remember that breakfast? I remember every word. Her voice deflated. He didn't mean... He meant it. So did you. Now you're experiencing what you prescribed for me. I can't believe you're this vindictive. I'm not vindictive. I'm protecting my property. There's a difference. I ended the call. She didn't try again. Through the following days, I monitored the situation through cameras and neighbor reports. Clark's truck drove by 3 times in 1 week. Slow, deliberate passes, like he was checking if I'd disappeared. Rose stood on the sidewalk once, staring at the house for a full minute before walking away. Mrs. Walker called with updates I hadn't requested, but appreciated. Saw them at the grocery store. Rose was complaining very loudly about inconsiderate family members. Another day, my daughter works near that budget hotel on the freeway. She saw Neil and Cora there. They looked worn out. The 30-day clock kept ticking. 23 days remained. Margaret called with final confirmation. Their lawyer withdrew the residency claim, apparently realized it had no merit. How long did that take? About 48 hours of research on his part. Quick learner. So it's over? The eviction stands? Unless they want to embarrass themselves in court, yes. They have 23 days left in the notice period. And if they don't leave, then we go to court and a judge orders them out. But they'll leave. Nobody wants an eviction on their record. I thanked her and hung up, sat in my recliner, reclaimed mine again, and felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Not happiness. Something colder than that. Vindication. They'd believed I would back down, that family sentiment would override property rights. They'd built their entire strategy on my supposed weakness. They'd been wrong about me, and they were running out of time to learn just how wrong. 3 days later, Margaret and I returned to the courthouse. Different purpose this time. We filed civil case CV 2025-03847, Wilbert Brown versus Neil Brown, claim for unpaid loan. The paperwork was precise. Every number documented, every promise recorded. $35,000 principal, loaned May 15, 2022. $0 repaid as of March 2025. Interest calculated at 6% annually per Arizona contract law. Total claim, $42,035. The clerk stamped it with the satisfying thunk of official process. Neil would be served within 48 hours. I felt no guilt, just the clarity of numbers that don't lie. The process server found Neil at his workplace in Tempe 2 days later. Mid-afternoon during a meeting, the manila envelope arrived at his desk. Co-workers noticed his face go white when he read the first page. He left work early that day. Mrs. Walker heard this from her daughter, who heard it from Cora, who'd heard it from someone at Neil's office. Small communities have their own intelligence networks. Neil called me that evening. His voice shook. Dad, you're suing me? Your own son? I'm collecting a debt. You borrowed $35,000. You promised to repay it. You didn't. I was going to pay you back, eventually. You know I'm good for it. 3 years, not one payment, not even a discussion about it. That's not eventually. That's never. Family doesn't sue family. This is insane. Family doesn't evict family from their own homes either. But you watched that happen. You chose Cora over me, so now I'm choosing legal remedy over family sentiment. His desperation bled through the phone. How am I supposed to pay $42,000? I don't have that kind of money. You had it when I gave it to you. You spent it. That's not my problem. I ended the call. He tried twice more that night. I didn't answer. Margaret had been thorough in preparing our evidence. We organized exhibits in a binder, bank transfer confirmation, email thread with repayment promises, follow-up text where Neil acknowledged the debt, spreadsheet showing missed payments, calculation of interest, each document numbered, labeled, hole-punched. This is prosecutor-level organization, Margaret said, reviewing the final binder. 35 years managing logistics. Details matter. They do, especially in court. Neil and Cora consulted their lawyer again. More money they didn't have for a case they couldn't win. Their attorney was blunt. according to what filtered back through the community network. The documentation was airtight. Email promises, bank records, zero payments. They needed to settle. Cora tried to argue it was a gift, not a loan. The lawyer shook his head. Neil's email explicitly called it a loan with repayment terms. They were trapped. Margaret drafted settlement terms. $42,000 paid in 24 monthly installments of $1,750, beginning April 1st. Alternative, judgment allowing wage garnishment, property liens, potential bankruptcy proceedings. Cora called me directly, bypassing the lawyers entirely. This lawsuit is pure greed. You're destroying us financially. I kept my voice cold. I'm collecting money I'm owed. That's not greed. That's justice. We can't afford this. With rent, bills, and now $1,750 a month, we'll barely survive. You should have thought about that before telling me to get a hotel. Actions have costs. You're punishing Neil for my decisions. Neil made his own decision. When you told me to leave, he said nothing. When your father told me to move out entirely, he said nothing. Silence is a choice. We can't pay this. Then my attorney will garnish Neil's wages. The court granted me that right. You called me unnecessary in my own home. Now I'm showing how necessary I was. The phone slammed down. I heard it clearly through the speaker before the line went dead. 2 weeks after filing, we had a preliminary hearing. I arrived with Margaret. Neil appeared with his lawyer, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Cora sat in the gallery, arms crossed, glaring. Judge Martinez reviewed the evidence methodically. Bank transfer, email chain, promissory language, zero repayment. Mr. Brown, the defendant, did you borrow $35,000 from your father? Neil hesitated. Yes, Your Honor. Was there an understanding you'd repay this money? It was more informal. Family help. The judge held up the email printout. Your email says, Dad, this is a loan, not a gift. I'll pay you back $1,000 a month. That seems explicit. Neil's shoulders slumped. Yes, Your Honor. Have you made any payments toward this debt in 3 years? No. Barely audible. Then the plaintiff's motion is granted. Judgment entered for $42,035. The gavel came down with finality. After the hearing, Margaret briefed me on enforcement. They'll try to miss payments. Count on it. What happens when they do? After 2 missed payments, we file for wage garnishment. His employer sends us part of his paycheck before he gets it. After 4 missed payments, we can pursue additional collection, liens, asset seizure if applicable. Will they test me? Absolutely. They still think you're soft. They think family bonds will make you forgive the debt eventually. They're wrong. Her slight smile acknowledged the truth we both knew. I know. Make sure they learn that quickly. First missed payment, immediate enforcement action. Teach them you meant every word. 3 days later, Neil's lawyer called Margaret. Client accepts payment terms. The formal settlement was signed that afternoon. First payment due April 1st. I set a calendar reminder. Through Mrs. Walker's network, I learned the Millers had found an apartment. 2 bedrooms near 32nd Street and Thomas, 4 miles away. $1,400 monthly, significantly more than they wanted to pay. Rose was already complaining. Mrs. Walker overheard her at the grocery store, talking to a stranger about the terrible apartment, with smelly carpet and impossible parking. Our son-in-law forced us there, Rose said, apparently unaware how entitled she sounded. We just needed a place to stay temporarily, and he evicted us. Elderly people. The stranger, according to Mrs. Walker, had looked horrified, but not at me, at Rose. I sat in my house that evening, my house, legally and morally mine, and reviewed the timeline. Eviction notice, served. Legal challenge, defeated. Condo lie, exposed. Lawsuit, won. Payment plan, accepted. 4 weeks ago, they'd told me to leave my own home. Now they were paying the price for that decision, $1,750 per month, for 2 years. Justice, I was learning, wasn't always swift, but it could be thorough. Neil's first payment cleared on April 1st. $1,750, transferred electronically, marked loan repayment, court ordered. Those words in the transaction description felt like vindication every time I checked my account. 2 days later, a group email arrived from Janet. Neil's cousin I hadn't seen in 5 years. Subject line, family meeting, April 12th. The message invited me to her house to discuss recent family tensions and find resolution. I recognized the setup immediately. This wasn't mediation. This was an ambush. The phone call started that afternoon. Aunt Linda from Tucson, first. Wilbert, I heard what you did to Cora's parents. They're elderly. How could you? Then Uncle Tom from Flagstaff. Your son is struggling to make payments. This isn't how family treats each other. Neil's brother Marcus, who rarely called. Dad would be rolling in his grave seeing you treat your grandson's mother this way. Each caller had the same script. Variations on cruelty, greed, abandoning family values. They'd been fed Cora's narrative. Poor elderly Millers, victimized by heartless Wilbert. I didn't argue with any of them. Instead, I listened, then responded with 3 sentences. I understand you're concerned. You've heard one side. May I send you documentation so you can see the complete picture? Most agreed, some reluctantly, some genuinely curious. That evening I composed a detailed email. 5 pages, single-spaced, chronological. February. Millers move in without asking. Breakfast eviction attempt, motel stay, legal consultation, lockout, condo lie revelation, Neil's unpaid loan, court judgment. Each section included evidence, photos, emails, legal documents, and crucially, a 45-second security camera clip of Clark saying, just move out entirely during that first week. I uploaded the video to YouTube, unlisted, shared only with family. Margaret reviewed the document before I sent it. This is bulletproof. Anyone reading this objectively will understand completely. I sent personalized versions to each relative who'd called. 9 people total. Within 48 hours, 3 called back. Aunt Linda first. Wilbert, I had no idea. Cora made it sound completely different. I'm so sorry. Uncle Tom. Those camera recordings. That Clark fellow is something else. You had every right. Even Marcus admitted, I shouldn't have called you without hearing both sides. Not everyone flipped. Some remained convinced I should have worked it out. But the consensus shifted dramatically. Janet emailed me privately on April 9th. The meeting is canceled. Several people are now questioning Cora's version of events. Cora's support network collapsed. 3 days later, the day the meeting would have happened, Neil and Cora appeared at my door together. Mid-afternoon, unexpected. Through the camera I watched them standing close, a united front, or perhaps Neil providing moral support while Cora made her play. I opened the door, but not the screen. Cora spoke first, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. Wilbert, we want to apologize. Truly. Can we start over? Reset everything? She looked at Neil, who nodded on cue. Please, for family's sake. I studied her face. Her mouth formed words of remorse, but her eyes calculated. This was a new tactic, not genuine change. What specifically are you apologizing for? She hesitated slightly. For not communicating better. For the way things happened. The way things happened. You mean when you told me to sleep on the couch or get a hotel? Yes. That? It came out wrong. We were stressed with my parents. Your parents who lied about selling their condo. Who moved into my house without asking? Neil jumped in. Dad, we're trying to make amends here. Can't you meet us halfway? Halfway would have been asking my permission before your in-laws moved in. Halfway would have been defending me at that breakfast. There is no halfway anymore. There's legal compliance and consequences. Cora's mask slipped slightly. So that's it? You'll just punish us forever? Not punishment. Justice. You decided I was unnecessary. I'm showing you were wrong. They left without another word. No slammed doors this time, just defeated silence. I watched them drive away on my security camera, then sat in my recliner, reclaimed mine, and opened my laptop. 9 relatives had received my documentation. 6 changed their positions. 2 stayed neutral. Only 1, Cora's aunt, remained hostile. The truth had worked better than any argument could have. I created a spreadsheet tracking Neil's payments. First payment, April 1st, on time. Balance remaining, $40.25. Expected completion, March 2027, if no missed payments. 23 months of accountability ahead. Through Mrs. Walker's network, I learned Neil was selling his car. the one bought with my $35,000. A for sale sign appeared in the back window. They were liquidating assets, scrambling financially. When Cora and Neil had arrived for their apology, I'd noticed details my logistics brain cataloged automatically. Cora's designer purse was gone, replaced by a cheaper one. Neil's shirt was wrinkled. Both looked exhausted. Their appeal was born from desperation, not epiphany. That evening, I reviewed my security footage from the past month. Clark driving by slowly, 3 times. Rose standing on the sidewalk, staring at the house before walking away. Cora arriving for her failed visit. Neil and Cora's final appeal. All documented, all time-stamped, all evidence of their continued attempts to manipulate, pressure, or guilt me into backing down. None of it worked. I was learning something valuable. When you stop engaging emotionally, when you let documentation speak instead of defending yourself, manipulators lose their power. They'd built their entire strategy on my supposed weakness, on family sentiment overriding property rights. They'd miscalculated completely, and with 23 months of payments stretching ahead, they'd have plenty of time to understand their mistake. Early May brought an unexpected revelation. I was watering the front lawn when Mrs. Walker approached from next door, her expression hesitant. "Wilbert, I need to tell you something. I should have mentioned it sooner." I set down the hose. "What is it, Patricia?" "When those Miller people were staying with you, my grandson looked through your side window one day. I know, kids being nosy. But he saw that man, Clark, moving furniture very roughly. He heard a crash, saw the woman cleaning frantically." My pulse quickened. When was this? Second week they were there. Mid-February. I assumed you knew about whatever broke. But seeing all this legal trouble, I thought maybe you should know they damaged things. I didn't know. Thank you for telling me. After she left, I went inside and began a systematic inspection. I'd cleaned the house after reclaiming it. Surface mess. Reorganizing displaced items. But I hadn't looked for structural damage. Now I walked through each room with different eyes. The dining room hit first. My wife's antique table, inherited from her grandmother, appraised at $3,000 a decade ago, had a 6-inch gouge in the finish. Deep, ugly, cutting through the veneer. Something heavy had been dropped or dragged across it. I knelt beside the table, tracing the damage with my finger. This table had survived 70 years intact. 3 weeks with the Millers destroyed it. In the living room, 3 circular burn marks scarred the hardwood floor near the fireplace, each about 2 inches in diameter. Cigarette burns or dropped embers, despite my strict no-smoking policy. The master bathroom toilet ran constantly. Water bill had jumped $40. The fill valve was damaged. It hadn't been broken before. Guest bathroom, cracked tile, loose faucet handle. Each discovery fueled something cold and methodical inside me. I called Precision Property Assessments. Raymond Torres arrived the next morning with cameras, measuring tools, and a clipboard. He spent 3 hours documenting everything. "This is significant damage," he said, examining the table. "Single impact, heavy object. See how the gouge goes with the grain? Something was dragged. Can it be repaired? Not to original condition. This is 1940s craftsmanship, hand-finished. Modern repair would be visible. Replacement value is your only option." It was my wife's, her grandmother's table. Raymond's expression softened but stayed professional. "I understand. That makes it irreplaceable sentimentally. But we can only assess market value. Based on comparable antiques, $3,000 is conservative." His final report itemized everything. Antique table, $3,000. Hardwood floor repair, $2,800. Plumbing, $1,200. Tile work, $900. Additional minor damages, $600. Total, $8,500. "This is court-grade documentation," Raymond said, handing me the bound report. "You'll have no trouble proving this." I paid him $400. Money well spent. Margaret drafted a demand letter to Clark and Rose Miller. Itemized damages. Assessment report attached. Payment requested within 14 days. Alternative. Civil litigation. The letter went certified mail. Signature required. 5 days later, Clark called me. His voice was venomous. "This is blackmail. You can't prove we did any of that. We're not paying a cent." I kept my voice cool. "The assessment is professional and documented. The choice is yours. Pay voluntarily or explain to a judge why you won't. We're not paying a single cent. Sue me if you want. You won't win. I've won every case so far. I'll win this one too. He hung up. I called Margaret immediately. File the lawsuit. Before filing, I remembered something. In early February, I'd photographed the house for insurance policy renewal. Those photos showed every room in perfect condition. I downloaded them from my phone's cloud backup, checked the metadata. Dates confirmed early February, before the Millers arrived. This evidence was irrefutable proof of the house's condition before their occupancy. The hearing happened 3 weeks later. Small Claims Court, Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Clark represented himself, couldn't afford another lawyer. Rose sat beside him, looking miserable. I arrived with Margaret and 3 folders of evidence. Clark argued the damages were pre-existing, and I was harassing elderly people. Judge Morrison reviewed my evidence methodically. Before photos showing pristine conditions, after photos showing damage. Raymond's professional assessment, Mrs. Walker's notarized statement describing what her grandson witnessed. Mr. Miller, the judge said, looking up, you claim these damages pre-existed your occupancy. Do you have any evidence supporting that? Clark stammered. We were only there a few weeks. We didn't do all this damage. That's not what I asked. Do you have photographs, testimony, any documentation showing this damage existed before February? We didn't think to take pictures. Why would we? Mr. Brown, on the other hand, has dated photographs showing pristine conditions before your arrival and damage documentation after. He also has professional assessment and neighbor testimony. That neighbor is lying. Her kid was trespassing. Looking through a window from adjacent property isn't trespassing. The testimony is credible. Judge Morrison closed the folder. Mr. Miller, you occupied Mr. Brown's property, and during that time, damage occurred. The preponderance of evidence indicates you're responsible. Clark's voice went desperate. We can't afford this. We're living on fixed income. Then you shouldn't have damaged someone else's property. Judgment for plaintiff. $8,500 plus $293 court costs. Payment due within 30 days. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, Margaret briefed me. That was decisive. He had no defense. Will they actually pay? They'll have to. If they don't, we garnish bank accounts, place liens on their condo. They still own that, remember? I'd almost forgotten. They'd lied about selling it, then damaged my house while living there rent-free. How long until they pay? 30 days or enforcement begins, my guess? They'll liquidate something fast. Maybe that truck Clark drives. They can't risk liens on the condo. That's their only real asset. Good. They should feel what it's like to lose something they value. Through the neighborhood network, I learned 2 weeks later that the Millers had sold Clark's truck. The old Chevy Silverado he'd parked in my driveway that first day, claiming my spot. They used the money to pay the judgment. Their comfortable retirement plan, live rent-free in a nice house, save money, keep their condo as backup, had completely collapsed. Now they paid $1,400 monthly for a cheap apartment, their truck was gone, and they'd handed me $8,500 for damages they'd caused through carelessness and entitlement. I sat in my dining room that evening looking at the gouged table I'd have to replace. It hurt, knowing my wife's grandmother's table was ruined. But the pain was manageable because justice had been served. 3 legal victories now, eviction, debt collection, property damage. Each one reinforced what I'd learned. Documentation beats emotion, facts beat manipulation, and the legal system works when you use it correctly. They'd thought I was weak, thought family sentiment would protect them from consequences. They'd been wrong about everything. Neil's third payment arrived mid-June, $1,750 exactly on time. I updated my spreadsheet. Balance remaining, $36,785. 21 months to go. The payment came from their joint account, but I sensed the strain behind those numbers. Between court-ordered payments, rent on the modest 2-bedroom apartment they'd found, and regular expenses, they were drowning financially. Through the neighborhood network, details filtered in. Bob Chen saw Neil's car at the grocery store near midnight, probably shopping clearance discounts. Mrs. Walker mentioned Cora looked exhausted at the pharmacy. Elena Rodriguez saw them arguing in their apartment parking lot, voices carrying through open windows. I didn't seek this information. It found me. Late June, Mrs. Walker overheard something through the Millers' thin apartment walls. Clark and Rose arguing about money, blaming everyone but themselves. Our savings are gone, Clark, gone. Rose's voice carrying desperation. Clark still insisting it was all my fault, that he should sue for emotional distress. Rose's exhausted response. With what lawyer? We can barely afford groceries. They'd learned nothing. Early July brought another development. Janet called while I was pulling weeds from the front flower beds. Restored now after months of neglect. Wilbert, Cora asked me to reach out. She wants to propose something. I wiped dirt from my hands, sat on the porch step. I'm listening. She's willing to publicly acknowledge her mistakes. Apologize to you, to the family. She just asks that you consider dropping the remaining debt payments. Start fresh. Start fresh, as if the past 6 months didn't happen. People make mistakes, Wilbert. She's trying to make amends. Amends would have been not kicking me out of my house. Amends would have been Neil defending me at that breakfast. This isn't amends. It's negotiating down consequences. So that's a no? Compromise was possible before they told me to leave my own home. It's too late now. The judgments stand. Every dollar, every payment, until it's satisfied. Janet sighed. You've changed, Wilbert. No, I've finally stopped letting people take advantage of me. There's a difference. 2 days later, Neil appeared at my door alone. Early evening, the summer heat just beginning to fade. Through the security camera, I watched him sit in his car for 5 minutes, gathering courage. When he finally approached, I opened the door but didn't invite him inside. He stood on the porch, looking 20 pounds lighter than 6 months ago, dark circles under his eyes. Dad, I need to say this. I was wrong. About everything. I should have defended you. I should have said no when Cora's parents moved in. I'm sorry. The words sounded genuine. Too late, but genuine. You're sorry now. 6 months and $5,250 in payments later. I was sorry before. I didn't know how to fix it. You fix it by standing up when it matters. You stayed silent when Clark told me to leave. Silent when Cora demanded my bedroom. Silent when I packed my bags. I thought they'd calm down. I thought we'd work it out. You thought wrong. And now you're living with those thoughts. His voice went desperate. Is there any way we can repair this? Any way back? You should have regretted it when you stayed silent at that table. That's when sorry would have mattered. Now it's just noise. He left, looking more defeated than when he arrived. I watched his taillights disappear down the street, and then returned to my evening routine. That night, lying in my bed, my bedroom, in my house, I thought about Neil's confession. Part of me recognized his pain was real, but I'd learned to distinguish between regret for actions and regret for consequences. He was sorry he was paying $1,750 monthly. Not sorry he'd betrayed his father. The difference mattered. Through July, the pressure on them mounted. Mrs. Walker mentioned Cora's car had a cracked windshield that hadn't been repaired in 6 weeks. Bob Chen saw them consolidating bank accounts, probably closing redundant accounts to save on fees. The Millers called Cora constantly. Rose's guilt trips about their terrible apartment. Clark's complaints about everything. Their demands for help Cora couldn't afford to give. I heard about one call through Mrs. Walker, who'd been on the phone with Elna when Cora's mother called her. Cora finally snapped. We're paying your court judgment, our rent, and his father's lawsuit. We have nothing left. The family was fracturing under the weight of consequences they'd never imagined. Their comfortable plan, live rent-free, save money, keep the condo as backup, had become a cascading disaster. Financial stress breeding marital conflict, breeding parental resentment, breeding more financial stress. A cycle with no exit except time and accountability. I sat on my porch one evening in late July, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. My house stood quiet behind me, restored to how it should be. No invasions, no manipulations, no one telling me to leave my own home. Just peace. Inside, my spreadsheet waited on the desk. 21 months of payments still ahead. But I wasn't counting them with anger anymore, just with patience. Justice, I'd learned, wasn't always swift, but it was thorough. The 5th payment arrived early August, at 11:47 p.m. on the due date, cutting it close. I checked my banking app the next morning, saw the deposit. Updated my spreadsheet. Balance remaining $33,285. 19 months to go. The sending account name had changed from Neil and Cora Brown Joint to just Neil Brown. Something had shifted. 3 days later, Mrs. Walker mentioned it casually while retrieving her mail. "Did you hear about Neil and Cora? Apparently she filed for divorce." I kept my expression neutral. "I see. Financial stress, according to Elena's daughter at the courthouse. And her parents calling constantly, complaining. That tends to happen when people make poor decisions." That evening, a text from Janet arrived. "Thought you should know. Cora filed papers last week. Said she couldn't take the financial stress and constant fighting. Neil's devastated." I read it twice, set my phone down, and realized I felt nothing. No vindication, no satisfaction, no guilt. Just quiet recognition that consequences had rippled farther than anyone expected. Through Bob Chen, I learned the Millers remained in their cheap apartment. Rose had been seen at the local food bank. Their savings depleted by the $8,500 judgment, legal fees, and moving costs never recovered. Clark drove a 20-year-old sedan now, his truck sold months ago. They weren't destitute, just diminished, living the modest retirement they'd tried to escape. Mid-August, I sat on my back terrace, renovated last month with new composite decking. Coffee in hand, my favorite mug recovered from where Rose had shoved it to the cabinet's back. The house behind me was clean, organized, mine again. The antique table was gone, too damaged to save. But I'd chosen its replacement myself, and the space felt right. Bob Chen walked by, waved, came over to chat. "Nice work on this deck. Looks professional." "Thanks. Had it done last month." "Place looks great. You know, a lot of folks around here respect how you handled all this. Standing up for yourself. Not backing down when family tried to push you around." I offered a slight smile. "I just protected what belongs to me. More than property. Principle. You showed people can't just take advantage because they're family." "Exactly. Family doesn't mean surrender. It means respect. They forgot that." After Bob left, I walked through my house. Morning routine restored. Waking at 5:30. Coffee in my reorganized kitchen. Reading news in the breakfast nook. Thermostat at 72 degrees. Recliner positioned exactly where I wanted it. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. That evening I found an envelope in my mailbox. Handwritten address, Neil's familiar script. Inside, a check for $1,750, the sixth payment, arriving early this time, and a single-page letter. "Dad, I understand now how wrong I was. About everything. I let Cora and her parents manipulate the situation. I should have defended you. I should have seen what was happening. I'm paying the price now, literally and figuratively. Cora's gone. My savings are gone. But I deserved this. I failed you when you needed me. I hope someday you can forgive me. Neil." I stood by the mailbox as the sun set, painting Scottsdale's sky orange and purple. Read the letter twice, then folded it carefully and slid it back into the envelope. Understanding came expensive for Neil. After 6 payments. After his marriage collapsed. After everything fell apart. The letter asked for forgiveness. Someday, maybe. But not because he asked. Because I decided it was time. I walked inside, placed the letter in my desk drawer with other legal documents, and returned to the terrace. The August heat was fading into comfortable evening. I held my coffee mug, watching the colors deepen across the sky. "They thought I'd fold," I said aloud to no one. "Thought family obligation would override self-respect." I paused, sipped coffee. They were wrong. Another pause, watching the sky change. I didn't do this for revenge. I did it for justice. There's a difference. I set the mug down carefully, and justice has been served. My house, my rules, my peace. 19 months of payments stretched ahead, but I wasn't counting them with anger, just with patience. Each deposit was accountability made tangible, consequences made real. The Millers lived diminished, learning that shortcuts have costs. Cora had walked away from wreckage she'd helped create. Neil paid monthly while understanding finally what he'd lost. And I sat in my restored home, drinking coffee as the sun disappeared behind the mountains. Mrs. Walker had invited me for dinner next week. I'd accepted. The HOA meeting was Thursday. I'd attend, like always. Life had returned to patterns I'd enjoyed before February's chaos. Not victory, restoration. I thought about responding to Neil's letter. Maybe eventually. Not yet. Time would tell if his understanding translated to sustained change, or if it was just remorse for consequences. Either way, the payments would continue. The spreadsheet would track them. The debt would be satisfied. In 2 years, give or take. Inside, my phone showed a text from Margaret. Checking in, everything stable? I typed back, completely. Thank you for everything. Her response came quickly. You did the hard part. I just filed papers. I smiled at that. The hard part wasn't the legal work. It was drawing the line, holding it, refusing to back down when everyone said families should forgive and forget. I hadn't forgotten, but I'd moved forward. That was enough. The sky darkened to deep blue, stars beginning to emerge. The neighborhood settled into evening quiet. Somewhere Neil was reading my silence, understanding I hadn't responded to his letter. Maybe that silence said everything necessary. I stood, stretched, picked up my empty mug, walked inside my house, clean, quiet, mine, and closed the door behind me. Tomorrow I'd wake at 5:30, make coffee, read the news, water the garden, live my life, the way I should have been allowed to all along. Justice hadn't been swift, but it had been thorough, and that, I'd learned, was what mattered. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching,